Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the This Week in Coworking podcast. Today I'm joined by the awesome Tim Schabsky from Germany. Tim, where are you calling in from right now?
Dortmund. Probably not so well known, apart from people who are into football or soccer. That's our thing here.
And where about in Germany is that?
It's Western Germany, in the Ruhr area. That is comparable maybe to Manchester for people who are in the UK, yes.
And so folks are probably wondering, okay, why Hector writes a newsletter about co-working all around the world? Am I speaking to Tim, who's sitting in a little, I'm not going to say village because I studied in Manchester and I know it's a pretty big place. Why am I speaking to Tim calling in from Western Germany today? Tim, you've actually been in the co-working industry since October 2013, which according to LinkedIn was 11 years and 6 months ago. So I wanted to, before we dive into why you're here today, what can you tell us about co-working in the German market? What has changed and what hasn't changed in the last 11 years?
Yes. Big question directly for the beginning. What has changed? I think it's similar to what we see in other markets, that it is no longer a niche thing. So when we started, the clear focus group, our target customers were startups, people who are self-employed, maybe creativity industry, and that's about it. And of course, now we have all the major large corporations from all industries really adopting the model. And then, of course, the discussion, what is co-working, what is flex work, always very interesting in that context. But it really helps that, many companies from all different industries adopt the co-working model. And that not only in Berlin, that is special about the German market. Berlin is always a bit ahead of all the other cities. But most of the people in Germany do not work in Berlin. I think that it's maybe different to London and France, where you have Paris, and in the UK, London, very large markets, very dominant cities. That is not the case in Germany so much. We have Berlin, that is special. And then we have the other big cities like Hamburg, Munich, and also the smaller cities. We have many cities around about 600,000 to 300,000 people living there. That is different in the market, I think.
Mhm.
And you really need to do the play there in the cities because it's different to what you have to offer in Berlin, and what works in Berlin probably doesn't work in these smaller cities.
Mhm.
Still not small, as you said, but we have many of those cities. And that is, I think, very, very different from Germany compared to other markets.
Yeah.
So the differentiation really between the one big city, Berlin, and then all the other cities who are much less international, not so many startups, the markets just work differently there, and also the requirements.
That is really interesting. And it's definitely something I've heard from a few different places, but I love this idea of there being not just one major city, not just one major market. We keep hearing from different places. US has a few major markets, so it's a bit larger, a bit different. But across Europe, you're right, it's normally London. Now Manchester is picking up and creating a second co-working hub. But most of the other countries are pretty much predominantly marketed in one area. So you're actually, the reason why we're having this conversation now is you recently announced some big news. You introduced Rivvers officially as a new brand identity. That kind of was formed between the merger of Sleeves Up and Workin. But before we dive into what that is and why and what next, let's start right at the beginning. What was Workin?
So working, and I think it's quite nice because we come back now to London, where I really learned about the concept of co-working. So I was in the real estate industry before, but as a banker, so I did real estate finance and spent some time in London. And yes, we got to know the co-working concept, and I thought, okay, it seems to work here. It also works in Berlin, but in the Ruhr area in Dortmund, where we come from, we have around about 5.5 million people living there in different smaller cities, Dortmund, Bochum, Essen, cities like that. And there were only 3 co-working spaces at the time when I started in 2013. And that is the market opportunity we saw. And then I quit the job in the bank. I convinced my wife to join me with this crazy idea so that we can do it together. And we really opened up a small space in Dortmund with 160 square meters. So it's tiny just to see there's some demand and we can make it work. But the idea was always to grow a network, and to grow a network with several spaces in one city. So that's also one thing that I think works in large cities, but not so much in smaller cities like 10,000 square meters, large office space in the city center. I think that's not the model for the second tier cities. And our idea was always a large network of smaller spaces. And so we bootstrapped it. We worked the first 4 years without employees, opening 4 locations, and we did a lot of stuff with the community. It doesn't work the other way. So it was really basic co-working, as you can imagine it. And yeah, the market picked up as we rightly projected. Of course, it was slower than anticipated. It was harder than anticipated how it is to run, to build up a community, to run space, but also a lot of fun. Yes, then we expanded. 4 locations in Dortmund, adding 1 or 2 locations every other year. And yes, then when COVID hit, that was very unfortunate for us because in the fourth quarter of 2019, we opened up 4 new locations, which we then wanted to fill up. And that was a bad timing, really. But we managed, also thanks to the great community we had. They didn't let us down. And we actually grew almost 100% in 2020.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we had to. As I said, we opened up 4 new locations. We doubled in square footage. So that was a question of survival or not. But we did it. Thanks to the team, thanks to the awesome community. And that is when we thought, okay, this really seems to work despite all those difficult circumstances at the moment. We then got an investor on board, a family office. And yes, that funded our further expansion. And now back in the summer 2024, when we merged with Sleeves Up, we had 13 locations. Yes, and round about 10,000 square meters. So that is the way we came. With the merger, the question really was, so what is the next step? Because in our area, we were the market leader. I think we have 1 or 2 locations in every desirable marketplace there, but we wanted more. And we also see the demand for more into different kind of company. But other markets were already, how do you say, they were already covered by other companies. And it would be really hard to make a nationwide co-working leader from within, really developing it. Quite hard. So to merge with another great company was a very sensible move. And with Sleeves Up, the great thing is that they had a very similar story. It matched directly with the founder. So we really was quite easy with the talks because we speak the same language. We have the same approach to co-working. And they were in the Frankfurt area, very strong. And they had some more locations in different parts of Germany. And 2 + 2 maybe equals 3 there. And we decided to merge those companies.
That's interesting, because I was going to ask, how similar were the 2 brands, right? Satellite locations, small operating square footage, as automated as possible. Was Sleeves Up similar to that?
Yes, I would say we have maybe 80% match. We have the same systems running in the background. So technology-wise, very similar, just a few differences. The operational setup was not the same, but also very comparable. Most importantly, culture, very similar. So hands-on family business, the same as ours, that was a fit. Of course, there were some differences. For example, they had a larger focus on meeting rooms and mice. And they also had a larger focus on technology and scalability. Quite frankly, I really liked the technology part, but they were very advanced in that space. And what we added to the table was, I think we were very strong in community management and co-working, really having the co-working vibe and feeling.
Yep.
And also, I think in terms of how we approach the design of the spaces to make it unique. They are very nice spaces as well, but I think we have a bit this approach to have unique spaces which you really recognize. And if you see the pictures on the webpage, we really put a lot of love and knowledge into designing the spaces.
Love that. So tell me a little bit more about the actual deal structure. Was it a pure equity combination? Was someone buying out someone else? Did anyone leave the company? What did it look like in practice?
Yes. So by and large, everybody stayed on board. And basically it was an equity combination. We founded one new parent company, and yes, we entered that on equal terms. And yes, I think that is also a very good structure going forward.
Mhm.
We are now 4 general managers, 2 from Workin. So that my wife and the 2 Sebastians from Sleeves Ups are the general managers. And under that, we made sure everybody has a great place to work. We didn't cancel any positions because we are on the move forward and want to expand the network.
Love that. So what's actually really interesting here is there's 2 ways you could have gone, right? You create the parent company and then you operate 2 brands, or you have the parent company and you rebrand everything and redesign, reposition. What you obviously chose the latter. Spoiler alert, folks. You now created a brand called Rivvers, which will absorb everything. But why didn't you go for the multi-brand approach, group multiple brands?
I think there are 2 good reasons for this step. And of course, it costs more money. It would have been cheaper to go with one or the other brand. I think what is not an option is to run 2 brands simultaneously, because it's very hard to manage a brand. And if you have to manage 2 brands, no, that really doesn't make sense. So it was clear from the beginning we want to have one brand. And as we talked about the deal terms, it wasn't that an acquisition where you have one major player and one junior party. It was really on equal terms. So we also didn't want to add one brand. I think for the founders, it would have been okay. So we would have been rational about it, but it's also a signal for the team that we are one team. There's not one major player. We will unite under one flag and carry that forward.
Right.
So this is the internal reason. And externally, of course, you learned stuff about the brands and how it works and the advantages of your brands and maybe also disadvantages. And so now we have the opportunity to start with a new brand that matches the vision we have, and not to be rooted in the past. For the past would be regional leaders, regional champions. That is Sleeves Up, that is Working. But we now want to, yes, become the dominant brand in Germany, and we want to have a brand that really aligns with this vision.
That's amazing. And it's such an inspiring way to think about it, because you hear mergers and normally there's egos at play. Founders don't want to lose the thing that they built, the community they built. Then you land up in there's this kind of Frankenstein deal where it's working, sleeves up working. And where do you work? I don't even know how to say the name of that place where I work. So I'm glad that you've gone the route to build a new brand. The new brand is Rivvers. Tell us why it's called that. What's the idea behind the brand? What's the vision?
So during the process, we really asked ourselves, what is it all about at the root core, and try to bring that down to a few sentences, which is not so easy. It took us several times. Of course, we had some help from great agencies from our network, but it's not so easy to really nail it down. And after long discussions and back and forth, we came down. It's basically we want to care about the employee or the customer, not the customer, the member who is at the space and who is experiencing his workday. That is what we want to focus on, and also focus on the messaging on. And we want them to experience flow in our workspaces, to have a great workday where everything is perfect, the coffee is great, Wi-Fi connects, everything works out, they get their stuff done and really have a great day at our place. And this idea of this flow concept being in the workflow, that is something we wanted to highlight, because we think that most other brands talk a lot about design and stuff like that. And it's very business to business, very rational. We want to focus on the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so the feeling should be joy of workflow, really enjoying your work. And that is the one side. And the other idea then was so how we came to Rivvers. Rivvers obviously is a reference to the joy of workflow, but also rivers connect cities. Rivers have a high, how do you say, quality of rivers. You always want to go to a riverside. If a river flows to a city, maybe in London, you can walk along the Thames. Most cities have rivers, and rivers also connect people and markets and cities, and they flow through all of Germany. And those are the two ideas that were merged into the brand name Rivvers.
I love that. And it's also really interesting because like rivers get stronger when multiple rivers come together, right?
Yes.
So that's like that's the immediate picture that I got when you said Rivers was the name. I was like, two brands, pretty strong, coming together, bigger river. Yes, I get this. So I think I was on the same page because I couldn't understand the presentation. My German is not that good when you announce the new brand, but I had a feeling it had something to do with that flow. So tell me about the future, right? You guys have rebranded now. You've got how many locations in total across the network?
42 now.
42 locations. Obviously, you've said a few times you want to become the dominant brand in Germany. What are the milestones over the next 5 years to get there?
Yes. So the large number we have put out is 100 locations in 70 cities. Obviously, it's not about 99 or 101. The idea is to really cover the German market, to be present in every relevant area. And so we had to look at the data also, where do we need to be present? So that is why we really came up with 70 cities. And yes, to cover this area and be able to say to the companies and our target customers, you probably operate in different cities as well. And so the chances are we have a great workspace for you in all relevant cities. So you need one contract, talk to us, don't have a look at the competition. It's way easier. So that is one part of the strategy. And the other part of the strategy, as I said, it's really about the user, the member in the space and the daily experience. And we want to really, I think we are quite good at that, but of course there's always room for improvement. And we really want to focus on how the members work at our space, that really everything's function. And that is not only in the space, that really begins when you inquire, when you want to buy a day pass through our website, when you want to request a tour, everything really should be smooth. And also with the contracts, have very clear, easy, fair contract that everybody can understand and make this whole customer experience great. And I think that is really what the German market lacks, quite frankly. And that is the gap we want to fill.
It's really interesting because German market, as you said, is very fragmented. Do you feel that there will be even more consolidation over the next couple of years in the German market?
Yes, that's a lot of talk about consolidation. And I think every major players are looking right and left or what might be a good move. And there's some consolidation coming. I'm sure of that. And also for us, it's still a viable strategy. So you don't need to build up any space, button up, of course, talking to other operators. We do that in the background, but it has to be a really good fit to make sure it fits within the strategy and to also make sure that it's, yes, in the right areas, right locations. There are many co-working spaces out there. Not all fit into our model. They're probably very well run, very good, but just how we want to set up our spaces, that needs to be similar. And also, quite frankly, there are, I think, some models that don't work. So yes, I think it's a tough market. It will consolidate and will be very interesting to watch. So a lot of stuff for your newsletter.
I will look forward to sharing those stories for sure. My last question is, since acquisition is one of the strategies you're exploring, how are you currently expanding? Are you doing kind of rent? Are you doing landlord management agreements? What is the expansion strategy with regards to your real estate?
Yes. So the management agreement is the way to go. We, from day one, from 2013, I said management agreement is what a co-working operator must do. But then you meet reality and find out that back in the days, first of all, we were unknown, the concept was unknown. And if you are lucky, you can get a management agreement, but then the property is crap. And that changed. That really changed. There's a lot of vacancy in the market. Landlords need to adjust. And we now have, I think, way more than 50% of our current locations are with management agreements. And that is also the way for us to grow. And with professional landlords who know the market and the product, I think there's a very good opportunity, and they understand it and they want it. So that is turned in the market management agreements. It's really the way to go. And yes, of course, we look at acquisitions as well, but it's hard to plan and put into a business model.
Absolutely. As you keep growing and you keep launching new locations, do keep sharing them with us. We love sharing your story. We love highlighting local brands who are doing something really interesting in their home markets. Tim, thank you very much for jumping on the podcast with me and for sharing. If anyone wants to reach out to you, a landlord or another co-working space, or maybe someone who's considering leaving their business, what's the best way for them to find you?
LinkedIn works quite well. So you can just link my profile, and I'm quite responsive there.
You are. That's how we landed up chatting here today. Thank you very much, Tim. Good luck with the next 5 years. We're rooting for you.
Thanks so much.